So, agriculture in human geography. It lets us know the connection between present and past geographical patterns in agriculture practices, and we can start by looking at the key issue number one, and that is, where did agriculture originate? Agriculture is so special to us in human geography because it completely changed our human lifestyle as we know it today. So before we even had agriculture, we had to rely on hunting and gathering, that is, practicing nomadism in our daily lives, instead of settling as we see it today. And it is a common theme in civilized societies that we record history. So before agriculture, humans focused mostly on their food and their needs and having to travel around to find it. However, once we actually gained agriculture, we could settle down and actually track history. And so it is a common theme in most civilizations today that we record stuff. And the actual definition of agriculture is the deliberate modification of Earth's surface through cultivation of plants and rearing of animals. So in hunting and gathering, the big takeaway from this entire lifestyle that humans lived before agriculture is that we traveled and lived in small groups of people, and we moved seasonally, that is, depending on the growth of plants or the presence of animals. Agriculture has had such a lasting impact on human lifestyle that today only a minute fraction of the world's population lives by hunting and gathering, and we can see that it is usually in isolated locations. So we're going to see a lot of folk culture, as we might review it, in these regions, which leads to this more traditional lifestyle. So the big takeaway from hunting and gathering is that we had low population densities, as we did not crowd or settle anywhere, and that we were in a very early stage of the demographic transition model, the earliest, as a matter of fact, being the first stage, as we had a constant death and constant birth. So at around 8000 BC, humans actually discovered that they didn't have to solely depend on hunting and gathering to actually survive. And we actually discovered the domestication of plants and animals. And this allowed us to grow at a more rapid rate and obtain a larger and more stable source of food. Now, the reason we didn't move as much once we civilized and obtained agriculture is because we could simply grow all of our food instead of having to rely on periodic movement. For instance, we usually waited for migrating animals to return each year as we moved along because we knew we tracked those periodic movements and couldn't just settle in one place. So instead of keeping track of all these movements, we can simply learn how to domesticate these animals so that it can just become quite easier for us. To understand the origin of agriculture more closely, it is important to note where all these crops actually originated. And so we will see that in Southwest Asia, we see the origins of barley and wheat, two crucial ones. In East Asia, we see rice, especially. That's one of the crucial ones for your FRQs. Sub-Saharan Africa, again, we have yam, sorghum, and rice. So let me do that in black. Oops. There we go. And in Latin America, So in Latin America, we see maize. So that is corn. That is an important one. So the two major types of cultivation of plants that we will see is vegetative planting and seed agriculture. So it sounds exactly what you would expect it to be. Vegetative, you directly clone the plants and you cut the stems and divide the roots. So you're dealing with the actual vegetation. Whereas in seed agriculture, you reproduced the plants with the seeds. And this slide generally shows us some of the origins of the animals we domesticated. So for instance, Southwest Asia, a lot of animals originated from there. Some we still use today, being cattle, goats, pigs, sheep, and dogs. Whereas Central Asia, we had one big one that was introduced into the New World a couple thousand years later, actually. So this is a crucial topic for the AP exam, and we deal with commercial versus subsistence agriculture. So we will take a look at this chart. In subsistence agriculture, the purpose of farming is to survive, to provide for the farmer's family or themselves, whereas commercial usually look at profit. The number of farmers in in subsistence agriculture is usually large because if you think about it, if you have farmers that grow their own food, you're most likely in a less developed country. So you have more farmers because you have less technology. Whereas in commercial, you have a smaller percentage of farmers because you're in a more developed country, and you have plus technology. So you have more technology in more developed countries, therefore needing less people. And the use of machinery is, so this correlates to this. The use of machinery in subsistence agriculture is limited because this will lead to a larger amount of farmers needed, whereas in commercial it is extensive. You're in a more developed country. You have access to these new technologies. Same with the farm size. So if you have a small plot of land, you're usually in a less developed country. And commercial, you're probably dealing with a larger plot of land. And so relationships to other business, this specifically applies to commercial. We're looking at agribusiness. So remember, you want to correlate subsistence with LDCs and commercial with MDCs. So we can see that in a lot of stage 2, maybe stage 3 countries, that we have a larger percentage of labor force engaged in agriculture. So in this choropleth map, we can see mostly 50% and above. So at least half of the population is involved in agriculture in these countries. And why is that? We have less technology to use, and if you think about it, most families are going to want their kids to help out with their farms because you do not have that access to technology. So in short, most LDCs have more people engaged in. So in this choropleth map, we see farmland per tractor, and we can see that in the more developed countries, so think of the developed world, Western Europe, the United States, some of the Americas actually. So we'll list MDCs, and then we'll also be taking a look at less developed countries. So we can see that the shade is not as large for some of these least or less developed countries. So the reason the measurement is farmland per tractor is to denote the amount of tractors each, or in general just machinery in agriculture, the countries have. So in more developed countries, you have more machinery, and in less developed countries, you have less machinery. So you will see a lot more hands rather than technology. And this picture, so we will label this as LDC using our context clues. And MDC here, we can see the difference between the lifestyles dealing with subsistence agriculture and commercial agriculture. So in commercial agriculture, notice how it's mostly men dealing with their agribusiness, using tractors, machinery, all of that, and large plots of land. Whereas in LDCs, subsistence agriculture, we usually deal with the entire family. As you can see, mother, father, the two parents and their children, or well, child individually in this case, and then it shows that all of the family is helping out on a smaller plot of land. So we have that more limited and intensive use of farmland.